So welcome back to Microsoft Project, where this is the second video for lesson 4, which is refining your project schedule. And we're going to be working on page 81, changing values of the work formula. You'll remember from previous lessons that this is the work formula. So the duration that you enter for a particular task times the number of units, max units, that are going to be spent on it results in the total work hours. So for example, if our duration we entered was 2 weeks and our regular units for this project is 40 hours a week, then we get 80 hours. So duration times units equals work. So that's going to be helpful when we're talking about changing values in the work formula. So keep that in mind as we go through this section of the demonstration and project. So here we are, we're back in Don Funk Music Video 4M in Microsoft Project, and we're going to be leaving the Gantt chart for a minute. So we're used to this Gantt chart view, and we are going to be leaving it. We are going to go up to the View tab and go to the Task Usage view. So this is a little bit different. It's kind of a hybrid of the Gantt chart and some other information here. So I'm just going to double click on these columns to open them up. You can see that just like in our Gantt chart view, we've got the tasks and their task numbers. This is the Scene 3 video shoot that we just did. But underneath it, you can see that it'll show you your resources that you have assigned to that task underneath it, and the units of work or amount of material or cost that are associated with those. So this is just a little bit more detailed view, another way to look at your tasks in terms of what has been assigned. So on number 2 on page 81, they have us pressing our F5 key. And this is just a way to zoom around a project. In this case, this project's gotten pretty big. So it's handy to go ahead and type 4 into the ID area, hit OK, and it's going to zoom us all the way up to task number 4, which is develop scene blocking and schedule. So in this view, we want to arrange some things so we can see everything clearly here. So we are going to kind of move this little divider so that we can see all the stuff that's in the left side of the task view. And we want to make sure that we can see this start column here as well. And we are actually going to insert a column and put more information into this view. So we're going to select the start column and we're going to right click it and go down to insert column. When we do that, we get a whole laundry list of different columns we can add that project already has the information pre-built for. So we are going to go down to the assignment units, and I am on number 5 on page 81 right now. So now we can actually see our units and our work and our duration for each task. So again, we're talking about task 4, develop scene blocking and schedule. And way back in one of like the first exercises we did, we put a task duration of 1.2 weeks or whatever in for that task. And you can see that the max units are at 100%. So that's 40 hours a week. We added 2 people to it, and the overall work is now 80 hours. Now, in this exercise, we are going to be changing the overall duration of this task from 1.2 weeks to 2 weeks. And when we do that, we want to make sure that the amount of time that Scott and Judy are going to be working on the task is going to stay the same, and adjust this at the same time. So in the duration field, we're going to go ahead and just type in 2W and hit enter. And as you can see, project automatically upped the amount of work for each resource. So Scott and Judy were at 40 hours, but now that we have 2 weeks in there, we're at 69 and 67 hours respectively. But say you know this is going to take 2 weeks overall, but they're not going to be working on it like all the time. It's not actually going to take them 40 hours each to complete this work. They're going to be basically working on some other stuff. So when we go up here to the duration, you can and hover over it, you can see that our little actions tab pops up. So you can go ahead and click the drop down there. You can see that increase work but keep the hours resources work per day the same is the default setting for this task. Okay, this is because it's a fixed units task, and we're going to go over those differences between the different settings for task types. But in this case, we don't want to increase the work. We want to decrease the hours the resources work per day, which is units, but keep the same amount of work overall. So when we move this duration up, that they're actually working the same amount of hours. So we're going to click that. And you can see what happens is Scott and Judy go back to working 40 hours each on this project. The overall work goes back to 80 hours on this project, or this task rather. But what has changed is the assigned units. They were both at 100%, and now they're working at 58 and 60% units respectively on this task. So basically that's going to free them up to, you can assign them to other projects during the same time frame as well. So that is how that works. So this task is set as a fixed units task, and that's the default. And all it means is that for a fixed unit task, and you change the duration, that's what we did, right? We changed it from 1.2 weeks to 2 weeks. Microsoft Project is going to recalculate the total work. So that was what Project wanted to do, which was increase the work from 80 hours to like 136 hours. That was what the default setting was telling it to do. So that's why we had to go in there and choose a different outcome, because we actually wanted to change the units. So that was the default setting, and that's what we just worked around when we went to that action tab and chose the other option. Okay, so now we are going to go over changing a task type using the task information dialog box. So we just went over a fixed unit task, and we're going to show how you would change that default setting in Project. So we're on page 83 of the book, change a task type using the task information dialog box. And we are going to go to task 6, identify and reserve locations. You can see our duration for this task is 5 total weeks, which is 400 hours of work, and it's split up between Jeff, Annette, Ryan, and Yanli. And remember that Annette only works part-time. She's a half-time employee, basically. So this is the task that we are going to change things up on. So we want to go and go back to the task tab on top, go to the information dialog box, and change the task type. So we're going to go to advanced, and where it says task type, and we're in number 5 on page 83, we are going to change it from the default of fixed units to fixed duration. Now, what does fixed duration mean? Now, why might we want a task to be a fixed duration task? Usually it's something where duration is the first thing you estimate. Well, that's kind of something we did for most of our tasks, but if it's something where the duration is going to stay the same when you add resources, such as training or backing up a computer system. When you think about it, if we have a big training event where everybody has to go to it and it's a 4-hour block of training, no matter how many people are going to that training, it's still going to take 4 hours. So that's an example of something that the duration is always going to stay the same for. Another thing would be a status meeting. You know, it's a 2-hour meeting that we have every Friday to catch everybody up to speed on the status of the project or something. Well, it's a 2-hour meeting. If you have more people in the meeting, it's going to take the same amount of time, basically. So this is something, again, where having more people isn't going to change the duration of how long everybody's going to be sitting there. So meetings and training, always think fixed duration for those. When the deadline is so tight that it's the primary driver for the duration of the task, so you got to make it work within the available time frame. You know, it's got to be 3 days no matter what. or else, well, then it's something where you're going to want to keep that at a fixed duration. And sometimes when the workload isn't your problem, so you're giving a consultant or a contractor basically, hey, you got 1 week to get this done, and it's not something where you have to assign individual resources to the problem. So that's when you might use a fixed duration task. So back to our task information dialog box and our task usage chart. We've changed the task type to fixed duration. And now we're going to go to the resources tab in the task information. And we are going to change the units of work for select members of our resource team here. So we are going to change Jeff Pike's units to 50%, and we're going to change Ryan Earring's to 75%. So what should happen in a fixed duration situation is that even though we changed the units, the duration should be the same. So there you go. It actually changed the work as we changed the assignment units, but the overall duration of 5 weeks stayed the same for identify and reserve locations.